There's been a lot of talk regarding X-Men 97. I wasn't alive as the original show aired, but I did watch some episodes on DVD, and I can say the revival not only understands what made X-Men the animated series work, but offers so much more. As a comic reader, I can tell the show isn't shy about what it's adapting, but that makes it a breath of fresh air after years of unsatisfying films and 6-episode events. The series truly captures the spirit of the comics, from Chris Claremont's iconic run all the way up to New X-Men. The show contains the right amount of messy relationship drama you'd expect from the X-Men, and it also seems to be pissing off all of the right people. But with each episode I watch, there's one thought in the back of my mind, something that keeps me from appreciating the series as much as I would like to, and that is the handling of black representation, or lack thereof. Though mutant kind is so often used as an allegory for real-world oppressed groups, the actual people of color on the X-Men can at times get surprisingly little to do. This isn't exclusive to X-Men. Many pieces of fiction use fictional creatures as a stand-in for marginalized communities, and while doing so isn't necessarily a problem, it isn't a fair substitute for actual representation. Check out this quote from Marvel Comics editor Tom Brevoort, in which he says he wishes there were more viable black male characters. Fans such as myself aren't the only ones who would consider this to be an actual problem. Hell, here's a fun fact: Rogue and Dazzler were originally meant to be inspired by Grace Jones, and yet both characters ended up being white women. So you'd think X-Men 97 is a step up, having 3 black characters. Legendary writer Dwayne McDuffie had something he labeled the Rule of 3.
That rule is, in popular entertainment, if there are 3 black people in it, it is a black product. You can have 2 black guys, although it's a stretch. If you have 3, it's a black show.
And he was proven right during his run on Justice League of America. People lost their minds, claiming there was a sinister agenda of some sort, an attempt at filling a quota, despite there only being 4 black characters in a team of 14, 9 of the characters being white. Even Red Tornado's human disguise is Caucasian.
And somebody, I think the artist did a pinup with all the black characters, and somebody leaked it and said, that's the cover. McDuffie's going to turn the Justice League all black. He's getting rid of the white guys, Never a plan, never even considered, but it freaked people out, so they're reading the stuff looking for proof.
This is why it's still so rare to see a diverse team. So let's look at the characters in X-Men 97. Bishop is written out of the show when baby Nathan Summers contracts a techno-organic virus. Okay, that makes sense, right? This is Cable's origin story. It'll have some kind of payoff later, and I doubt it's permanent anyway. Besides, there's still Storm. The show even adapts one of her most noteworthy stories to date, Life Death, but where in the comics it took up the central plot, here it's relegated to a B-plot. I'm aware that this sounds like reaching, and you can find ways to excuse each of these instances, but it certainly isn't a good look when you consider the horrible adaptation of the 3rd black character, Sunspot. For the uninitiated, Roberto da Costa is a mutant with the ability to channel solar radiation, hence the code name. He comes from Brazil, and is the son of a wealthy businessman. He was originally introduced as a member of the New Mutants, a team of trainees at the Xavier School, but has since come a long way. Some X-Men adaptations have a habit of putting far too much shine on one short hairy Canadian, as opposed to properly developing the whole team, and the New Mutants are even lesser known than them, so to find out Sunspot would be a main character in the revival of X-Men the animated series was exciting, especially the idea of seeing him alongside Storm and Bishop. Imagine the surprise to discover that the character has been whitewashed for the 3rd fucking time. And yes, it was a surprise, because you wouldn't think that at face value, given his design. It isn't as blatant as the other examples of whitewashing in adaptations and comics, both of which this character has suffered for years. But looking behind the scenes, you'll find that his actor is not black, which is odd, right, given they cared enough to recast Jubilee with an Asian actress, which is a much appreciated choice. but one that makes it all the more baffling that they didn't do the same for Roberto. Even more so given just how vital Roberto's race is to his character. A non-white character's race is almost always more important than it is for white characters, as their race is usually a conscious decision on the part of the creator, whereas many white characters are only white because many saw and still see whiteness as the default. So nothing would change if you were to race swap a character like April O'Neil, for example, but you couldn't create a white T'Challa or Jon Stewart. But even aside from that, Sunspot's literal origin story revolves around his race. Allow me to point you to Marvel graphic novel number 4, in which Roberto's mutant powers manifest for the first time during a hate crime, and it is explicitly portrayed as such. One of the bullies even says, "Your father's wealth can't change the color of your skin. You're still black." Very shortly followed by something that I am not going to read out loud. No matter how rich and privileged Roberto might be, he will never be one of the good ones. And this runs in parallel with his wealth also not freeing him from the prejudice that comes with being a mutant. Yet X-Men 97, the show which has been praised left and right for going there and tackling real world issues, just ignores this aspect of Roberto's character. The scene where he comes out to his mother as a mutant just doesn't bother to address any of this. His father is nowhere to be found, and Roberto's mother is designed to closely resemble him, whereas in the comics, she is a white woman, almost as if this is the show's way of just sidestepping the issue entirely. I'm not the only one to notice this. People even called out the casting decision when it was first announced, with the showrunner and executive producer, despite previously claiming to be a big believer in authenticity, standing by a very clear lack of authenticity in the casting, and saying those critical of it are erasing his Brazilian heritage. This rationale sounds oddly similar to the casting choices in the Fox X-Men films. The New Mutants movie, you know, the one that no one watched? Yeah, they went out of their way to cast an actor from Brazil, the place with the highest black population in the world outside of Africa, to play Sunspot. Just not an Afro-Brazilian actor. And X-Men 97 did the exact same thing, under the guise of authenticity. It's so disingenuous. And it makes any progressive messaging in the show feel hollow. I don't know how more obvious it could be that this is rooted in a much deeper issue. The kinds of bigots the show offends are, ironically, the very same people the show's afraid to offend. You can have 2 black characters, although it's a stretch. If you have 3, it's a black show. Black representation in media as a whole has made progress, but even in just the X-Men specifically, I love the way Storm's hair is depicted in recent comics. There's a video where Storm's voice actress points out that the character's skin is darker in 97 than it is in the original series. That's really cool. And though I have problems with how the show adapts life-death, there's a great scene in X-Men 97 where Storm and Forge speak not just as mutants, but as a black woman and an indigenous man.
You, of all people, should know the perils of trusting those in Washington.
That's not fair.
But there is still a very long way to go and too many who are comfortable with maintaining the status quo. The rule of 3 is still very much in play. 97 has already been greenlit for another season, so there's still plenty of time for some damage control, assuming there are those in positions of power who actually care. And let's hope there are, because while the show has made many strides, in other ways it still seems to cling to the past. And I would hate for them to prove Henry Gyrick right.
We merely hoped some humans had evolved beyond the past.
Did you honestly think we'd roll over and let mutants take over the planet? That we wouldn't fight back?
Yet your cruelty has only made humanity more sympathetic to our cause.
Oh, did it? No, you're in vogue, Storm. A fad. Look at my mutant friend. But under all that fashionable sympathy, normal people know the more room we make for your kind, the less we leave for ours. So we might wear tolerance on our sleeves, but we know the naked truth. Tolerance is extinction.